Hi, Junior with today's thought, and today is going to be about Lebanon and Israel. It looks like Israel is preparing to go into Lebanon on the ground, send troops in there. They just moved, I just learned shortly before I'm reporting this, the day before you're seeing it, that the Israelis just called up 2 more brigades, sent them north, and they're training for an invasion. Meanwhile, they've been bombing and bombing and bombing, destroying missile launchers, which is what I'm going to be talking about today in a moment. But destroying missile launchers, they just destroyed, I think, about 60 intelligence assets, and they've been killing leaders, assassinating leaders, just about everybody immediately under Nasrallah, except for Nasrallah himself. So things are going and getting up. Plus, the Israelis need, if they're going to go in on the ground and fight a war, they need to do it before, I think, November it is, or around there, because then the winter gets so harsh there that it would be very hard to fight in there. So it looks like a softening up operation, that they're softening up the Hezbollah before going in there, which makes sense, which makes a lot of sense. And I'm going to talk about these rocket attacks on, that's what I could also fill you in on. Well, you probably know about it already. For the first time, Hezbollah launched one of their bigger missiles, a ballistic missile loaded with 1,500 pounds of explosives. They headed towards Tel Aviv, and the Israelis' first use of their David Sling anti-missile defense, and shot it down before it got to Tel Aviv or before it hurt anybody, actually. So that's the latest developments. Now, to illustrate what to buttress what I'm talking about now, where I'm going to talk about Lebanon, we just have to go to Gaza for a moment, because Gaza, Hamas had been building up strength and building tunnels for 14 years or so, whatever it was, since they took over in 2007. So the Israelis, it was obvious to me that they needed to go in. They could have gone in a long time ago to do what they're doing now, to eliminate Hamas. And they always hesitated doing that because Netanyahu's been criticized, and leaders say, why didn't he go in earlier, or why didn't other governments go in earlier? And the fact is, the reason is, because the Israeli public would have resisted it at the time. You needed an October 7 for Israel to finally get off the dime and do it, and the Israelis decide that it's worth going in to pay the price, because they expected the price to be much higher. They said, Hamas is heavily armed, and they've got all these tunnels, and if the Israelis go in, everything is booby-trapped, and thousands and thousands of Israeli soldiers would be killed, and it doesn't make sense to do that just because of these incendiary balloons coming over the border, or the occasional rocket attack, of these small little rockets, unguided rockets that the Israelis, their anti-missile system, had been shooting down. But after October 7, they said, okay, we're willing to risk all these thousands of deaths and thousands of soldiers. And they went in, and lo and behold, so far they've been in there, we're approaching October 7th. Pretty soon it'll be the 1-year anniversary. And the last time I checked, about a tad over 600 Israeli soldiers had been killed in Gaza, which is nothing to be, it's something to mourn if you're an Israeli, especially because that it's a country of about 10 million people. So 600 people in a country that small is equivalent to tens of thousands of Americans being killed, relative to our population size. But the point I'm making is they were expecting things to be so bad, and it turned out not to be. 600 is nothing to be happy about, but it's a lot less than the 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, whatever they were afraid of. Which now brings us back to Lebanon, because the Israelis have been letting Lebanon, letting Hezbollah build up their missile supply to 150,000 missiles because they were afraid to go in, or they didn't want to go in because of, they said, 150,000 missiles and rockets would rain down on Israel and just cause the enormous damage to Israel and practically destroy the whole country. I mean, the Israelis would win in the end, but massive destruction. And then, of course, there's a destruction that Israel would wreak on Lebanon. So they always hesitated. But then again, October 7th, starting on October 8th, Hezbollah started firing lots of missiles. There have been about over 8,000 by now. I don't know the latest count. Last count, probably approaching 9,000 by now. But they were firing these missiles, and the Israelis are now talking about going in on the ground. And the other thing was the idea that Hezbollah has tunnels too, and these soldiers would pop up, and they would, and thousands of Israelis would be killed, Israeli soldiers. But now seeing what happened in Gaza and this present situation in Lebanon, I'm wondering, and I think the Israelis are wondering too, is Hezbollah's threat as big and as dangerous as had been feared? Because Israel has been bombing and hitting these launchers. And just a little math here, the number of rockets is less important than the number of launchers. It doesn't matter how many rockets you have if you can't launch them. And you remember the Israelis, or Hezbollah was going to launch about 3,000 missiles they were planning on Israel, and they ended up launching about 300. Could have been 1,000 that they were planning. I think they were planning 3,000. That's my memory. You can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But they were expecting, the point is that Israel's anti-missile system took out so many of those rockets that it didn't, and a lot of the rockets aren't accurate, and the defense system doesn't even bother with them because they're going to land in open fields, yada yada. So that turned out not to be as bad. And now the question is, and then you could throw in now the Israelis they've got a year of experience dealing with tunnel warfare, with an enemy that has tunnels in Gaza, and as we've been seeing, that the death toll of Israeli soldiers is not nearly as bad as has been feared. And now the Gaza Hamas is no longer a military threat. They're just basically they're doing mopping up operations now to prevent Hamas from reconstituting themselves and rearming when the Israelis leave. But they're no longer a threat to Israel. The occasional rocket maybe, and that's going to stop eventually. But getting back to Lebanon again, so these 150,000 missiles, and you have the Israelis bombing and destroying all of these launchers, which will make the missiles useless without the launchers. And they've been taking out their top leadership, which Hezbollah obviously can replace with the next person down, but that person will not have the experience and the seniority and the if you want to use for want of a better word, gravitas. They're just like when Trump killed Soleimani in Iraq. Iran replaced him, but the person with which Iran replaced Soleimani does not have nearly the stature that Soleimani has. In fact, I don't even know that person's name, whoever replaced him. Maybe someone, I can look it up, but that's the whole point. So we take that insight back to Lebanon, and these 150,000 rockets and missiles. Where are they? Israel has been pounding Hezbollah for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and they're getting ready to go in on the ground. And where are these 150,000 rockets? Why aren't they launching them? And that's the dilemma that it's a dilemma that Hezbollah, that I see. I'm not a military man, full disclosure, but this is a possible dilemma that I see them being in, because if they launch all 150,000 rockets, well, they can't. I mean, they don't have 150,000 launchers, but if they start sending in, well, we'll say 3,000, 5,000 missiles and rockets a day, the Israelis, they'll come in right away on the ground. And once you fire, this is the point, or one of the points, once you fire these missiles from a launcher, you've exposed the launcher, and you better move them. If they're mobile, you better move them pretty fast, but a lot of them are in houses. So that's the one problem of this dilemma. That's one aspect of the dilemma. But the other one is, if they don't launch them all as fast as they can, the Israelis are gradually, little by little, every day, and actually I would say lot by lot every day, destroying the launchers, hitting rocket sites, taking out leadership, and pretty much softening up, taking apart Hezbollah before the Israelis go in, which they're going to do anyhow. So that's a problem that the Hezbollah has. They can, I mean, if the Israelis go in, then they'll probably, Hezbollah will launch everything they have. But we've seen but for how long? My own personal belief is that it would take the Israelis maybe 2 weeks to overrun southern Lebanon so completely that at least the long-range, really dangerous missiles will be stopped, because the bigger launchers, there was a photo that the Israelis put up of the inside of a house, this giant missile in a house, but the launcher is fixed. You can't move it. It's in the attic of a house. So Israelis have already warned. They've been sending warnings to Lebanon, to the Lebanese in the southern part of Lebanon, below the Litani River, saying, you better get the heck out of there, because we're going to if you are in a house that has anything, any Hezbollah material, arms or missiles or rockets or whatever, you better get the heck out of there, because we're going to destroy the house. And Israeli intelligence seems to be so good that they know which houses have the weapons, and they're going to just bomb the heck. They'll destroy the houses. So what does Hezbollah do? They can, if they launch the missiles, just everything they can as fast as they can. Now the Israelis will just be on them like a ton of bricks. If they wait, then hold them in reserve to launch if Israel comes in. They know the Israelis are going to come in. If the only way Hezbollah prevents it, we have our horrible administration talking about negotiating a ceasefire and the usual blather. But that's not going to satisfy the Israelis. They want Hezbollah physically over the Litani River, the other side of the Litani River, which is about 18 miles north of the southern border of Israel, out of rocket range. That is the point. So the Israelis will, which, by the way, shows you how small Israel is, why they have to take these preemptive actions, because right on the border, 18 miles, that's about the length of the whole country, maybe, because supposedly with the missiles there, Hezbollah can hit any part of the country. That's what I heard, or at least a civilized, maybe not all the way to the Negev, which is desert. But anyways, back once again to Lebanon. So what do they do? If they throw everything at them, then the Israelis come in right away. If they reserve their fire until the Israelis come in, they know they're coming in, then the Israelis are little by little destroying more and more rockets and more launchers and killing more and more leadership. And the lower Lek, I mean the pager, the Grim Beeper operation, that took 1,500 out of action right there. So 1,500 wounded or killed, and so they're going to have fewer and fewer rockets. The longer Israeli takes, and that's what they said they're going to do. We're going to take our time, as much time as we can, destroying as much as we can from the air before we send our soldiers in. So what does put it this way? That's why it's a dilemma. Either way, they're screwed, and it's a matter of how screwed and how quickly screwed they will be. And but we can pretty much guess the end game. So what does, and then Iran has I'll throw this in since we're on this subject. There's just read an article, a couple articles. Hezbollah, they've been begging Iran, come in, attack Israel, fire your own rockets at Israel, go after, and the Iranians are not doing anything. They're not doing anything because they don't want an attack on them from Israel, and that's the whole point. I don't know why these other people don't get Hezbollah and Hamas don't get it. They're just cannon fodder. As somebody wisely said, Iran is willing to fight to the last Palestinian. They're willing to sacrifice their lives, but they're not willing to sacrifice any Iranian lives. So they're not going to come in. It looks like they're not going to come in on Hezbollah's side, but then that's a dilemma for Iran too, because they're depending on Iran, on Hezbollah to be a deterrent, to deter Israel from taking out Iran's nuclear program. Well, they're not going to have that deterrent pretty soon and within the foreseeable future. So what do? If they come in on Hezbollah's side now, they're going to get attacked. And the Israelis, they sent, when Hezbollah fired 300 missiles and only one got through at Israel, missiles or rockets, then Israel, they took out they were very careful. They took out a single air defense, Russian S-300 anti-missile battery right next to the Fordow plant, I think, one of their nuclear sites, and just took it out to show the Iran that their air defenses are useless, and if Israel decides to attack, send in planes to attack Iran, they'll destroy all their air defenses, and then their nuclear program will be a sitting duck. And so you see there, they have a problem too, what to do. So that's what happens. So they can't attack Israel, or they feel they can't, and that means they're going to have to sit there and watch Hezbollah get neutralized, and then they won't have the deterrent anymore, and they don't have Hamas as a deterrent anymore. Well, we already know that. So I'll just sum it up. Interesting developments in the Middle East, on the border of Lebanon and Israel. Oh, and I'll just throw in, I keep having these, well, you get a lot of thoughts today, today's thoughts, geopolitical thought, because people talk about 60,000, I think was the last number I saw, 60,000 Israelis who have been displaced from the north of Israel on the border with Lebanon because of these rockets. That's why Israel wants to push them back. But you're starting to see stories of the Lebanese. I've seen pictures of just lines and lines and lines of cars, traffic jams of Lebanese in the south of Lebanon who are fleeing too. So it's not just Israelis now who are being hurt by by Hezbollah, and they think they're so smart and forcing the Israelis to evacuate the north, but they're also forcing their own Lebanese people to abandon too. And I believe this is why Hezbollah can operate so freely, or one of the reasons at least they can operate so freely in the south of Lebanon, is I believe it's majority Shiite. Lebanon, the Hezbollah, they're Shiites. So they're hurting their own people. They're forcing their own people to evacuate. And I don't know the numbers, but I think already more Lebanese have had to evacuate than Israelis have had to evacuate. So that's the whole thing. The same thing Hezbollah throws in. They'll fire a whole volley of rockets and maybe hit a house, maybe injure a couple of people, maybe kill a person. But look what happens to Lebanon, how many people and Hezbollah, how many people are killed on that side. That's why I can't figure out. It's a simple matter of math. The Hezbollah is losing so many people compared to Israel. Why does this even make sense? And the only answer I can come up is because that's what Iran is paying them, and that's what Iran wants. And if they don't sacrifice their own people to attack Israel, when Iran says, Iran says jump, and Hezbollah says asks, well, how high? So I think they're being forced to attack, because if they don't, then the money stops, and without Iran's support, Hezbollah will not last very long. Not just from the money, but the materiel they send. Those rockets are not made in Lebanon. They are being, at least the sophisticated ones, they're being sent from Iran. So that's problems for Iran, problems for Hezbollah, problems for Israel, but not as big as the problems for Iran and Hezbollah. And my prediction is, I feel pretty confident of this, that as time goes on, and not that much time, Israel's problems are going to get a lot smaller. Hezbollah's and Iran's problems are going to get, and Hamas, let's not forget them, all of Israel's enemies' problems are going to get a lot bigger. That's my thought for today. Thanks for stopping by. If you could subscribe, that would really be great. Share this video with anyone you think would benefit from it. Oh, and welcome new subscribers. I got a few in the last few days. And comments always welcome below the video in the comments section. But most of all, come back and see me again. I would love to see all of you again. And until I do see you all again, bye.